So we're going to jump back into Peter Sewell's evidence to the Post Office Horizon IT inquiry, and following the kind of hot potato issue of who's going to check for the events log for the potential hidden errors, silent errors that are happening to ensure that ARQ data is accurate, they finally get some help unofficially from the SSC. But then clearly they do remain concerned enough about it to raise a change proposal. But there's some confusion about whether the Post Office would or should be made aware of this. They're planning on fixing this issue, not in Legacy Horizon, because they're deeming that to be too costly, despite the catastrophic impact it can have in terms of Horizon shortfalls, but instead to focus on the upcoming release of Horizon Online and to raise a change request to fix it there. And in the change request, it does note that the current manual process is prone to error. And Peter Sewell is asked about whether that does influence how comfortable he is writing the witness statements and what the witness statements are. Now, the consequence of rejecting the change proposal to fix the Horizon system and make it automatically auditable so that the ARQ data, the audit data that provides the Post Office, is accurate by consulting the events log, is deemed to be that it's going to be very costly to Fujitsu to manually process these things. There's likely going to be contractual penalties if they can't provide the data requested to the Post Office, and importantly that they'd have to weaken the witness statements to reflect the fact that the audit process doesn't have the requisite integrity that might have been previously implied. Let's jump into the inquiry.
Let's have a look at the attachment to that email. That can be found at FUJ00155272. We see there HNGX, that's Horizon Online Change Proposal. Date raised the 13th of October 2008. And it has you named there as the change owner. Is that correct?
I think it was, because I was the manager in the particular sort of work.
I mean, that's quite a responsibility, isn't it?
I think it's default because it was a security thing.
So is your evidence that you were or weren't significantly involved in this change proposal?
Significantly involved insofar as I knew what was going on and I bought into it, yes.
How high up within the company would this proposal have been seen?
Would depend on what the change proposal was, how important it was.
Well, it's marked as urgent, so we've got to presume it was seen as quite important by somebody, at least by Alan at this stage.
As the change owner here, would you have raised it with people who managed you?
Yes, my manager would have been involved, yes.
So who would you have raised it with?
2010, I think that'd be Howard Pritchard.
2008?
2008. I think it was Howard Pritchard still. I think it was still Pritchard.
And is the purpose of a document like this to ultimately share it with the Post Office?
The ultimate is to cost out what this is going to cost and agree to it with all parties that are involved.
And the counterparty being the Post Office?
I don't remember the Post Office being involved with this CP, no.
Well, if we look at the very top, we have Fujitsu's logo, we have the Post Office's logo. It is a change proposal to the Horizon system. Presumably this is a document that you are preparing for the Post Office.
No, it's an internal document. It's a change proposal to our existing systems.
So was the intention for this document to always be an internal document that wasn't seen by the Post Office?
I just think it's an internal document for ICL.
I'm going to read to you from the document. The second substantive paragraph there says, historically, the Horizon Audit Service has relied solely on the retrieval and analysis of archived riposte message store data when servicing the Post Office audit data requests for Horizon branch transaction data. A recent issue, and that refers to the peak incident log that we have seen this morning, has identified a deficiency in this approach. In certain failure scenarios, it is possible that the Horizon counter may write an inconsistent set of messages to the local message store. This casts doubt over the overall integrity of the resulting transaction data. Thank you. If we could have a look at the paragraph below that. It says about halfway through that paragraph, it says a tactical solution has been incorporated into the Horizon Audit Retrieval process to provide a short-term remedy to this problem. For every branch riposte data retrieval, the archived events generated by counters at the branch are also analysed to identify any possible occurrences of problems which might adversely affect the integrity of the transaction data. So having identified the problem, the process that was being undertaken prior to the change was a manual solution that, as it explains there, remedies the problem.
Checking the events, yes.
Checking the events.
Yes.
Could we please have a look below that? Thank you very much. It then highlights deficiencies with the current solution. It says it is a largely manual process which is error-prone and time-consuming. Is that something that you are aware of, that the process that was being undertaken up until the change is made was error-prone?
I don't know about that. I wasn't aware there was an error prone. It meant it was a manual exercise. Any manual exercise contains risk.
So on that basis then, if you're writing statements, you've got to write them on the basis that you're admitting that, well, in his words, any manual process is error prone. This one was certainly identified as being error prone. We can't dig more into why they thought that. Maybe it was just because it was a manual process. Maybe this particular manual process was more error prone than other manual processes. But whichever it is, that's surely worthy of a mention in the case of witness statements, you would have thought.
So you don't know about that? I mean, this is a document that was sent to you.
Everything we did was to check the events without finding errors.
This is a document that was sent to you of which you are the owner. Mm-hmm. It describes the process as error-prone. Is that something that you were aware of?
Well, I think you have to be, because it's a manual process, yes.
It says it involves moving large volumes of data between the audit server and workstation. I think we've seen that in itself carries risks because it's taking something from a server to a workstation. Keeping data such as that on a workstation is itself inherently problematic.
There is a risk, of course, yes.
It requires local and insecure storage of event audit data, invalidating certain statements made within the current witness statement.
That bit is quite damaging, isn't it? Invalidating certain statements made within the current witness statement. So as in, we can't really say those things. That's problematic for any cases they've had previously or ongoing, which has relied on those certain statements that are now deemed to be invalid. Again, something you would have been aware of?
Yes.
That the process invalidated certain statements that had been made in witness statements. It has no DR mechanism in the event of DR and gives a reference there. Are you able to assist us with that, or is that too technical?
That's the disaster recovery mechanism with the disaster recovery site at Lewis.
Could we please go over the page? It says, whilst we believe that we have to live with this tactical solution for the remaining life of the Horizon audit system, a permanent solution for the Horizon Online audit solution is required, which addresses the above deficiencies. And then it sets out some requirements. Under the final heading on that page, reason for change and justification for required date, it says, while we do not believe that due to time constraints it's practicable to introduce this change into Horizon, it is required to ensure the viability of the ongoing prosecution support service within Horizon Online. So it seems to be that there wasn't sufficient time, or perhaps sufficient, I think we've heard some evidence about it costing a lot to introduce into Horizon, what we know as Legacy Horizon, and it was instead going to be introduced when the new system is implemented.
Yes, that's right.
Yes. Would you agree with the cost issue as well as time, or?
Well, that was a major player in this, yes, the cost of introducing it into the legacy system, yes.
Yes. And if we go over the page, please.
And that is a problem. When you don't think about these issues up front and incorporate them into the original design, they do tend to be more costly to try to retrofit later on.
I mean, just pausing there, though, with the time constraints and the cost constraints, people were, during this period, being prosecuted, or there were court cases that were going on relating to the Horizon system. It might be asked why it wasn't seen as sufficient priority in those circumstances.
to introduce it into the earlier release.
Yes.
A, the cost, A, the resource availability, and this would have to be accepted by the project, the post office project internally, for this to be accepted. And we feel the board, it went through a change control board, would probably not have accepted it.
And if, as we've seen, the process that was being undertaken in the interim period was error-prone, as I say, if there were court cases that were ongoing, why do you think it was not seen as that significant a priority?
There was risk attached to it because it was a manual process. It was just important that this was carried out successfully.
Yes, and why do you think a more reliable solution couldn't have been implemented earlier?
For cost as much as anything, and resource availability. And I think it would have put the whole HNGX proposals pushed back.
Thank you. Consequences, if not approved, we are obliged to present and vouch for the integrity of audit data that is fit for purpose, i.e. admissible as evidence in court. If this change is not approved, we will need to continue operating the current Horizon tactical process for the lifetime of Horizon Online. This raises the following issues. We're liable to service penalty payments if we cannot provide dependable audit data and witness statements when requested by the Post Office. There is a risk of prosecution support service suspension if there is any interruption to the current tactical process. Will require ongoing allocation of resource, and it's to insert the number of man days per month, to operate the current tactical process. And then it says data integrity issues inherent with the current process needs to be addressed by weakening the content of the witness statement.
Which is the previous kind of conclusion I've come to before, isn't it? Where we've said about, if there's issues with the process and it's error prone, you really need to be mentioning that in the witness statement. Be interesting to see whether they went back to previous or ongoing witness statements at the time and actually edited them to take this into effect prior to Horizon Online being rolled out.
Were you aware that data integrity issues that were inherent with the process that was ongoing needed to be addressed by weakening the content of the witness statement?
Only by reading these words. They're not my words.
That wasn't a concern of yours at the time?
I was concerned with overall getting the thing through and ensuring that our events were checked prior to going HNGX.